Welcome to TechZine TV.
Hi, and welcome to this new episode of the TechZine TV podcast. I'm at the Partner Summit, Cisco in San Diego, and I'm here with DJ Sampath.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and somebody told me you have something to do with AI and Canvas and all that stuff in Cisco. So just briefly describe what you do.
A little bit. Let me. I'm the SVP of products for AI software and platforms at Cisco here. I report to Jitu Patel, who's the Chief Product Officer.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting. My performance reviews go very. It's always interesting when you skip level as a CEO and you have to have a conversation about like, hey, how are things going and. But
do you get an A+?
It's hard. Jitu's
on stage. There was lots of talk about getting a B-
well.
or an A+.
He did really well, didn't he?
Well, I've seen many keynotes in my life, so.
So I'll tell you what. Here's the thing, right? I think the part of my job is to be able to build AI software and platforms. We're constantly thinking about like what is it that's going to fundamentally make customers' lives a lot easier when they're using our products, and we're building different types of software. We launched, if you remember, about at Cisco Live US, not this year but the last year, we talked about AI pods. Since then, we've launched AI Defense, which is to secure the use of AI, and then last Cisco Live US, we talked about AI Canvas, which is sort of the reimagination of Agentic Ops of like how are you going to operate when everything's going to be agents instead of AI.
And I think one of the reasons why AI is being perceived as maybe hard is also, I think, from my perspective, is that it's a lot of castles in the sky and there's a lot of hype around it, right?
There's a lot of hype.
But especially now, because we've only gotten used to AIOps, and now we're getting to Agentic Ops. So
that's right.
Why do we need a new name for that?
Listen, here's the thing, right? I think we're moving from the reality is like, this already. A lot of people would tell you that AI is moving incredibly fast, right? If you think about this, the ChatGPT moment was just in 2022, in November.
But it's moving very fast, but it's still very immature.
See, I think it depends on if you think about this, if you think about any technology, right? For instance, it almost starts out as being a toy, right? A chatbot was not something the way you expected to interact with AI. You always assume there'll be a humanoid form that's walking around. But what the chatbot basically does for you today, like if you think about the amount of workflows that people rely on these chatbots, it's huge. Yeah. If you just think about, if I were to go back in time and tell you, hey, listen, you're going to actually not have to write code. Yeah. An agent's going to go out and write code bases for you. All you have to say in English language.
You still need to understand it, right? So then because there is this.
Understand what?
Understand the code, because you need to check it, right? Because if you ask it,
you're humans in the loop to be able to do that.
If you ask it to write something and it goes in sort of lots of convoluted S curves and U curves, and it comes out with something hardly usable. You don't really want that,
think about this from a front-end perspective. It's very easy to see. Like if you say, hey, go build me a website, and the website needs to have these following things, right? It's not that, even if you didn't understand code bases, you would be able to see what it produces.
Yes.
And so it becomes very easy to see exactly what showed up, and you can validate, hey, you didn't get the color of this icon right, or this box right. Now, for complex code bases, when you're thinking about complex microservices in the back end and so on and so forth, you're spot on. Yeah. You're right about it. So there are going to be certain types of use cases where the speed at which it has moved is unbelievable. Like you could just like say that, hey, design this website for me, design a game for me right now. Games that you could play like tic-tac-toes, and like starting from there to like more complex ones like flying a simulator. You could just ask a prompt to go do it, and it gets it done for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But just coming back to Agentic Ops, right? So how is that different from AIOps?
Right. So the reality is what's happening. So when we talk about these coding agents, right? These are not like AI applications anymore. They're agents that just go perform an autonomous execution by itself, right? So when something like that happens, you start to think about the kind of things that customers are expecting at this point in time is less of a back and forth between a chatbot. They're expecting, AI agents to be able to perform certain tasks from start to finish for them. And back to your point about the hype and the expectations, the expectations are sky high right now, right? And so we have these conversations with customers saying, does this feel like AI? And they're like, listen, I care about agents more. Like we talk to customers, are you deploying chatbots or are you deploying agents? And the answer is, we're deploying more agents than we are with like AI applications. So we're already seeing that shift happen. So we felt like Agentic Ops is better captures the spirit of what we're trying to talk about versus like, and people have conflated AI. They've been talking about AI ops for like 5 years now, even though ChatGPT has been only around for 3. So it tells you like,
because AI has been around before ChatGPT,
Correct.
right? So there was already lots of AI going around.
Exactly.
And that's also that I think that's an interesting side effect of the recent sort of past 3 years, is that the old-fashioned ML stuff and the AI is also getting more important, and it is also getting a boost from what's happening in the Gen AI space. Right?
Absolutely, right. I think machine learning at the end of the day, like there are core algorithms that have been in use for a while that still are absolutely relevant. And it forms the foundation for what we're trying to accomplish with newer architectures, model architectures,
I think
like transformers.
All the AI applications, at least most of them, use a combination of new and old AI, right? At least that's as far as I understand it.
Depending on the types of applications, right? I mean, there are certain use cases where you still use predictive-based things, models what you're building that needs some of these things. But when you start to think about the more common usage of the large language models, you're starting to see the newer architectures are really good at keeping track of like the types of conversations that you're having, have memory characteristics, have context characteristics that are so different. So I think it is entirely based on the types of use cases, like you pointed out. But I think when you start to think about these agentic ops, I think we sort of like when we talk to our customers or partners, we kind of like honed in on like 3 core principles for agentic ops, right? The very first one was for agentic operations to be successful, you needed to bring data across different silos together. Right. That was the first tenet, because when you think about, if you just operated with the one single type of thing, it's very hard for an agent to autonomously execute the types of tasks we're expecting it to go out and do.
That's way too many API calls anyway, right? So it would sort of become very useless very quickly.
Exactly. And so it becomes very chatty, the tokens are too much, and then you can't access some other parts of the data. So it really cannot reason and debug and troubleshoot and do all of that stuff. The second core tenet was that, whenever you're looking at being able to solve problems with like, in IT space, it's largely a team sport, right? You're going to have like multiple people sit together, try and figure things out. And sometimes it's not just people, it's a combination of, people along with agents being able to debug and troubleshoot certain things. And so most tools that exist today are fundamentally, being designed as a single player game. Like if you're a gamer, you know the difference between a single player and a multiplayer game.
I'm not a gamer, but I understand what you mean.
It's like, if you build a game from the get-go as to be a single player game, it can only go so far. But if you intuitively build something that is multiplayer from the day zero, like then it starts to get a lot more interesting. And so agentic ops, you have to make sure that something is built for that purpose. And the last piece, and the most important one, is that agents are powered by models. Right? Whether it's a small model, large model, doesn't matter. It's powered by a model at the end of the day for it to be able to understand, reason, and do things. And our belief is that you need a purpose-built model to be able to effectively solve very meaningful problems.
Yeah, right? And in this case, it's a deep network model, right?
Correct.
So that's
exactly
what you,
right. So we launched a deep network model.
And I think that's interesting because that's based on actual human interactions over the past 30 years, right?
That's correct.
So, and I think that makes it much more. I mean, not necessarily much more powerful, but it makes it very powerful. But it's actually because it's actually based on something real.
That's right.
And I think nowadays there's lots of talk about synthetic data and using all that, and I think that has its purpose.
Yes.
But it also has limitations.
Correct.
And you don't want to just add the data for the sake of data. You want to add data that actually adds something to the equation, right?
Absolutely. It's a very very nuanced point, by the way. That synthetic data is important and has a place. But you just can't, you need to have, subject matter experts do human evals and provide you with data that makes sense to be able to appropriately guide these models to be able to do the task.
Yeah. So and then so those 3 points, those 3 pillars together are sort of formed AI canvas, right?
That's correct. That's exactly right.
And I wrote a story on it a couple of months ago, and
which is great, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you. But lots of people read it as well, so that's nice.
Yes.
As you can see, I don't handle compliments very well. But that's
well. Now that I know, I mean,
that's an entirely different story, and maybe something for another discussion. But in that story, I wrote actually that I think that the canvas part is the most important part of that name,
right?
Because it is actually a blank canvas when you start, right. and it fills up with boxes and on the fly widgets and all that stuff during the troubleshooting, because it's basically a troubleshooting tool, right?
That's right.
Let's call it what it is. That's what it is.
That's
right?
what we started out with. So,
Yeah.
so the first use case that we're focusing on is to be able to help our IT professionals be able to debug, troubleshoot situations that they're seeing. For instance, if there's a wireless access point, to which your devices are not connecting properly, and you want to be able to take the assurance use case and say, hey, listen, I want to know exactly what's going on over here. Canvas helps debug and troubleshoot that, right? And normally, what would take you multiple steps, whether you are using, the dashboards or CLI, what have you, it would take you like a lot of different dashboards to go to. So we're simplifying that by leveraging the deep network model to be able to get you there.
Yeah. So is it only reactive or is it also proactive?
So we're starting out with the use cases are focused on,
there's a ticket or there's an item, something is up, and then
Correct.
you sort of.
And we hope that we will learn from some of these interactions and allowing us to be able to, like, as the model continues to see exactly a specific pattern inside of a customer's environment, it's going to start becoming more and more intelligent about starting to take proactive actions.
And do agents also start canvases, or is it only humans that start canvases?
So it's a little bit of both. I mean, one of the things that we're doing is that you can, whenever you spin up a specific widget that you talked about, a generative UI widget that shows up, there are agents that can be spun up to be able to effectively constantly give you updated information. So what's really happening is if you think about the deep network model, when you ask a question, it's using and picking the right types of tools that it can go and execute on a specific task and calls agents to be able to effectively take a task to completion and returns a response back. So you can almost think about this
So you could also have a monitoring agent.
Totally.
That continuously monitors everything, that if everything goes well, and
you
just ask the network or the model every 5 seconds or pull it and look, is everything okay? Yes. And
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay.
And I think the thing is this, right, where each of the tools that we have, like whether it is, Splunk or Thousand Eyes or Meraki, have the ability to have agents, that are built and running inside of those systems already, which means what you're doing is you're starting to orchestrate some of these things to be able to say, hey, listen, go ask the Meraki agent, that is looking at Wi-Fi assurance to be able to come back and tell me if there's an outage. And then when that happens proactively, you start seeing some of these notifications. So you can sort of think about this as expanding in like several different directions. We're using this as a good starting point to be able to get customers excited about what they can do with it.
And obviously, then there's the response or the mitigation part of the issue, right?
Yeah.
Is how much automation isn't there at the moment? Not a lot, I think, as of yet. But
So the way we're doing this is, you've heard us. It's sort of, you have to think about this as a continuum, right? I think if you go back to one of the things that we did, we announced a product called Workflows, which is now officially gone GA. Workflows were like a simple way for us to be able to use a no-code way of creating an automation, saying, hey, go from point A to point B, and that's pretty exhaustive, right? And we've already have that inside of a platform, especially with the campus and branch side of the house. Now, on top of those workflows, we also launched an AI assistant. These assistants had skills that you could use to be able to effectively perform using natural language, you could perform certain types of tasks.
By the way, is that the same AI assistant that's in the unified branch stuff?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So then we took all of these building blocks into the canvas to be able to say, listen, now we're evolving in that continuum. A canvas which gives you the deep network model combined with other capabilities that can effectively now tie some of these things across the board. So all of the automations that were already baked into the workflows, the skills that were built inside of the assistants now manifest themselves inside of the canvas. In addition to that, we're also training these models to be able to debug and troubleshoot automagically by itself, right? So
it is actually, sorry for interrupting, but it is actually an interesting starting point to do it like this, because you're in a relatively constrained environment, right? So you know the boundaries quite well,
right?
Because the boundaries are in the deep network model. That's more or less.
Yeah.
So you're doing troubleshooting. So how do you see this sort of moving on into sort of, if you want to make it broader, because then you probably going to run into some more issues with hallucinations, all that stuff. And
I think you're right in that there are going to be some other types of issues, but it's a little less about hallucinations. It's more about, I'll give you a quick example, right? So let's say that there are, you start opening up MCP servers, model context protocol servers that front a lot of other tools that are out there. The question then becomes, can the model pick the right tool to be able to solve the right type of problem? Yeah. And I think that is more of an interesting problem to think about. It's less, hallucinations are a little less interesting because you can find ways of being able to steer the model in a specific direction. Right. But I think the challenging part is, what if you had two tools, one of them give you like a ping, and the other one give you trace route. Knowing when to use each one of these tools appropriately to be able to give you the right response.
Yeah, and also I think it's looking at it from my perspective, it's also cutting it down into sort of bite-sized portions enough to actually have the right output. So not
Correct.
have because obviously we're talking about non-deterministic stuff, right?
That's right.
So and if you make the portion small enough, you get to some sort of determinism.
I think so. I think that's where, if you think about what the workflows provide, workflows are very deterministic engine, like if then else,
Yeah.
And then you have the assistants that are a little more non-deterministic, and then you have these canvas pieces that are, that's going to do reasoning by itself, right? So if you think about this, it's sort of like moving from like a L1 autonomous driving to L2 autonomous driving to L3 and so on and so forth. We're trying to bring that capability into this mix. But if you look back, it is going to be powered by foundational blocks that are deterministic, right? That are very precise in terms of what it does. So you get to choose that flexibility as well. You can actually say, hey, listen, every time I get this model, I want this model to use deterministic workflows, or I want this model to debug this like a human being would. Yeah. And I think that's a choice that you can make as an operator. And
from a practical standpoint, if you obviously, I think AI Canvas is in alpha now, so it's in the hands of the customers.
That's right.
Or at least the first batch of customers that are using it. What are the prerequisites? What are the minimum, what we would used to call the minimum system requirements to actually start using it? Because obviously you need licenses for if you want to use ServiceNow, you need a ServiceNow license, right?
Right.
So how
So we're primarily putting this inside of the Meraki dashboard for the first set of use cases, where if you are a customer of Meraki and Thousand Eyes, you can start using Canvas in with the different sets of capabilities, right? So we're primarily focusing on the campus and branch use case first, and it's in the hands of our first set of customers. They're trying it out.
Is that also because that's the easier use case?
I
could imagine data center and at least even Metro are probably they're completely different ball games.
I think the reason for us picking this was these are some of our most popular SaaS-based assets, right? If you think about Meraki, think about Splunk. These are the first two places where it shows up. And we're also, working towards building what's called the Cisco Cloud Control, which we announced at Cisco Live US last year, earlier this year. Yeah. The Cisco Cloud Control is going to start to bring all of these assets, the data center, Meraki, it's going to bring security capabilities all together into a single control plane. And it makes it easier for us to be able to start connecting the dots across different capabilities in a single place. Yeah. And in the meanwhile, we felt like this was a great starting point for us to be able to test that, use this as testing grounds to show the value and keep building on top of it.
Yeah. So hypothetically, what could you do with AI Canvas if you don't have a Splunk license, and if you don't have a ServiceNow license, and if you don't have a Thousand Eyes license? What could you do with? Is it still useful?
I think right there, the deep network model that can do reasoning, troubleshooting, debugging is still valuable. Within the context of Meraki itself, right? You would see that there's a good amount of capabilities that you get from the AI assistant that's baked inside of Meraki and the workflows that's already in there. But what you get with the Canvas is still the multiplayer workflows, the purpose-built models, the ability to collaborate with other folks and create a system of record with what you can drag and drop with those widgets and store them as boards. There's a bunch of experience capabilities that still make your debugging workflows a lot better, right? But beyond that, I think we're going to, the real power of that starts to kick in when you start to connect the dots across the board.
Because the more insight you have, the easier it is to get to a resolution, right?
Correct.
So less guesswork, because you will you can drill down actually into the real resolution.
The difficulty of the problem that you're trying to solve, like if you just have one thing, it's a lot lesser. But the minute you have more than one thing, your ability to kind of debug and troubleshoot is a lot harder. And our goal is to reduce the complexity of that type of operations. Now, you might have other third-party folks, third-party vendors in the mix. Our goal is to be able to front that with an MCP server and start to reduce the complexity, even if you had something that was not Cisco, right? But that'll be something that we take on as soon as
that's going to be the interesting part as well, right? So because there are not many. I mean, Cisco would like it, but they're not. Not all customers are wall to wall the same vendor, right? So there's lots of customers. For example, if you have a colo data center, you want to do something sort of centrally for your colo data center. There's lots of gear in there from all kinds of vendors. So
you're right. I mean, we would like for it to be all Cisco. Yeah. But that's it's not always the reality. And so, but the other interesting part is we've always been very vendor neutral, right? We've done things at Cisco, if you take a look at our history, we've always come up with protocols that allow us to work with like different, ecosystems together. Even if you take a look at our collaboration tools, our WebEx device works really well with Zoom, with the Teams, and in fact, it's one of the best for other products.
Probably also partly driven by the fact that they're bigger than WebEx is probably. But I mean, I get it, and I think it's the right play because, especially for the hardware, because why wouldn't you do it, right?
We do this even in places where we are more predominant, inside of a customer's environment. We've chosen to say, listen, we will operate, give you the optionality for you to be able to bring in other vendors to be able to do this. So we've systematically, that is part of our DNA. We've done this with open source projects, agencies of project, which involve 40 member companies.
You donated it recently, right?
We donated to the Linux Foundation. So we care about providing customers a choice and building an ecosystem of players that can come along and partner with it.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. I really look forward to hearing more about it in the future.
Hey, Xander, this was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And next time, we'll do this with more storage.
Yeah, I'm going to bring more storage next time. Thank you very much.
Hey, man.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching TechZine TV, the channel about enterprise technology that brings you IT insights and analyses from events all around the globe. We cover everything, everywhere. Visit techzine.eu for more written in-depth articles and analysis, or keep watching techzine.tv. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels and share your favorite videos with your colleagues. We'll see you soon.